Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders, a safe space for women to thrive in community where their voices and stories are heard. We're a sisterhood supporting each other to live our dreams and embody the sacred feminine to restore balance on our planet. Join us each week as we return to the unconditional love and guidance of our heart and our womb. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I invite you to walk this path of beauty, devotion, and service with us. I'm here today with dear friend Sena Shellenberger, and I'm so excited to dive into this because it's been how many years? Almost 7 years since we last connected. I think it was 2017 when I had her on and sharing her journey with cacao. That's episode 33, if anyone wants to go back to it. Sena is, she's someone that I really see follows her heart. And she worked at Google and she chose to leave something that was out of alignment for her, to follow her path and to travel and to explore what is really, the meaning of life and how can we live in alignment and in connection with this earth. And I've been watching her transformation over the years, and she's been doing deep dive into helping people with their health and coming into their radiance and doing hair mineral analysis, hair tissue mineral analysis. So we're going to learn all about that today. Thanks for being here, Sena.
Thanks so much for having me back, Meredith. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So let's just pick up where we left off. And we got to hear a lot of your journey in that, how you found cacao and how that changed your life. And I'd love to hear what started happening for you. What started shifting for you? Is cacao still part of your life? What was happening in your health and your journey to lead you where you are now?
Yeah, it's. I'll try to make it kind of succinct, but really, it is fascinating that this is kind of a 7-year cycle. I feel like that I'm in the integration of pretty much now. That's really where I've landed. And I would say when kind of we recorded this podcast, I was in this kind of like a spiritual awakening place. I was very much opening to my own, heart, my consciousness, my intuition, just the sense that there is something more than the kind of, mundane, linear life that I grew up in. And now I'm in this place where I feel like I have that, awareness and consciousness and heart opening in my being. And also I'm much more grounded in my body. And so the cacao and the work with plant medicine. So cacao was kind of my opening into really feeling the power of ceremony and the power of being in a group and being in a heart open space and sharing, vulnerably or authentically, and the power of like the healing power of that. And then I kind of, I didn't know at the time that I think I was very metabolically depleted. I think I came into that world from a pretty malnourished place. And so over time, I did start to become kind of dependent on whether it be cacao. I got really into microdosing psilocybin mushrooms for a period of time. I was talking about that online. And I noticed like that was kind of coinciding over the years with my health starting to deteriorate. So by my late 30s, I'm 36 now for context, just turned 36. So by my late 30s, my late 20s, I started to develop more seasonal allergies. I stopped being able to digest gluten and dairy. I just was like eating more of a limited, restricted diet. And I was having my energy levels were all over the place. I eventually started having I would kind of wake up sweating, like kind of hot flashes. And it just started to get worse and worse. And because I was leaning on these substances, essentially, I mean, they, it can be used as a medicine or it can be a poison depending on how you relate with it, depending on, and like that can apply to anything, right? Herbal medicine, plant medicine, like more psychedelic based plant medicines, pharmaceuticals, etc. So I was looking back, I was kind of leaning on those like cacao and microdosing. I kept myself a little bit high, like a little lifted, where I wasn't really connected to my body. And so those symptoms started to get, my body started speaking more loudly until finally I had to listen. Um, so what ended up happening was I developed pretty severe histamine intolerance. It really kind of crashed down in August of 2021. So for anyone that's not familiar with that, it's kind of like being allergic to everything. It's like it's like your system, my bucket of histamines would just overflow. And so I had to be really, really, I had to cook all my food fresh. I couldn't eat leftover meat. I couldn't drink cacao. I couldn't microdose. I couldn't do tea, which were all like parts of my kind of ritual practices at the time. Really sensitive to seasonal allergies, really sensitive to stress. So I
What were
was,
some of your symptoms? What did it look like when you had a reaction?
yeah. I would have insomnia really bad. My body would basically go into like like a fight or flight or alarm stage. So could be insomnia, could be kind of like feeling like I'm crawling out of my skin. Like if you've gotten a lot of mosquito bites and then you're like itching and just like really uncomfortable, really emotional. Like my luteal phase before my menstrual cycle, I would like uncontrollable crying. Just yeah, really like emotionally unstable at that time. Brain fog, really bad brain fog. I had to stop doing like video interviews because I would literally like I would be talking and just lose it. And it was like really scary. Diarrhea or like stomach stuff. The thing with histamine intolerance is it can be like kind of a wide range of symptoms, headaches. So people often may have histamine stuff going on and not even realize it. Depression is a big one. It really does impact your mood. So yeah, really, again, I just have to like emphasize really sensitive to stress because if you're sensitive, if you're in histamine intolerance, and then I was in a relationship that wasn't good for my nervous system. And I now looking back, I'm like realizing I couldn't fully heal until I was in an environment where my nervous system felt safe, which ended ultimately in me having to leave that relationship. So that sent me on this deep dive of trying to figure out how to support myself and get out of that really sensitive place. And I ended up winning a hair tissue mineral analysis test on Instagram in a giveaway. And so I basically started on this journey. I started learning about Weston A. Price and kind of pro-metabolic eating approaches. And I tried a lot of other stuff too that was not supportive for me. Like I did keto and I did parasite cleanses. And I feel like I kind of went the like, I don't know, more like not mainstream, but like trendy like health things that you see online. Did that stuff, didn't work. And then I eventually found basically eating a nutrient dense diet, realizing that I totally had disordered eating, like just not eating enough protein, not eating consistent, meals throughout the day. And so I was depending on my adrenals. I was depending on sugar for energy. And essentially I just wasn't nourishing myself properly, which ultimately drove my metabolism kind of into the ground. And so through nutrition, and then I found this mineral path and everything started to click into place. So that's kind of sort of catching up to present day where I am now.
Yeah. What did it look like when you started implementing those suggestions? Like, were you taking supplements? Was changing your diet? What kind of things did you add in?
Yeah, I would say the biggest, I did start taking supplements based on my specific hair test results. So I started to learn that randomly supplementing, which I mean I did, for all the rest of my life before that, um, that doesn't really work or make sense because we're all in different cellular states. And so yeah, started specifically supplementing. And then I literally started learning how to cook for myself, like really get into the kitchen in a way that I'd never done before. I grew up cooking a bit. Like my mom was a good cook when I was young. I mean, she cooked often. But yeah, it wasn't kind of a part of I didn't have like family dinners every night necessarily, and so I had to really just reorient myself to, okay, like I need to eat 3 meals a day and I need to, I'm sensitive, so I have to cook them myself. And it just was this long, kind of tedious, arduous process to reacquaint myself with that. But I'm so grateful for it. So, so grateful for it.
Kind of funny, I'm noticing a lot of us in our 20s and the communities we were in was like cleansing, green
Mhm.
smoothies, just like the vegan type lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so many of us are in the total opposite now in our 30s. Just like,
Yeah.
meat.
Eat all day. Yeah, I know. I think I feel like our bodies, especially as women, like there's kind of this moment where we're like, wait a second, if we're going to be building babies and like breastfeeding, and there's just this kind of deep, I feel like primal knowing that we needed more nutrients.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is your relationship to just knowing that the earth isn't as nutritionally
Mhm.
dense or as our vegetables that we get? Is your take kind of like we really need supplementation, or how do you work with that?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I started this with like, okay, I really want to do as much as I can with just whole foods. So even like whole food based supplements, so like desiccated liver capsules or something.
Mm.
But the deeper I got into hair tissue mineral analysis and mineral balancing, I realized that I'm kind of viewing kind of our generation as like we're the ones really dealing with the fallout from the Industrial Revolution. Like the nutrient density in our foods has, exponentially decreased generation after generation, and the level of toxins we're exposed to has exponentially increased. And so this is why I think many of us kind of have this mentality of like, oh, well, my grandma smoked 2 packs a day and drank a bunch of beer and everything was fine. Like we're like, well, they were hardy, so why are we so sensitive? And it's like, it takes time for, like, I feel like now our mitochondria are like a little, like quite a lot more fragile, honestly. Like we just have less resiliency because we're generationally at a much less nutrient dense place than our grandparents, great grandparents were. So they were more resilient to things like that. And this also applies to plant medicines, which I can kind of talk to too if that's of interest. But um, so now basically I do believe that like when I do believe we need supplementation in a very personally tailored way to to support these levels of deficiency that we're in addition to food and lifestyle. Like I don't believe that just throwing supplements at someone is going to just be the fix, like not at all. Especially for women, I think we have to learn how to feed ourselves a nutrient dense diet. We have to um, have the courage to get honest with ourselves about things in our lifestyle that are not supporting a regulated nervous system. So it's not just supplements, but I do feel that to really, really move the needle, they are often very helpful.
Are plant medicines still part of your life?
Not really. Um, I honestly still, so I basically stopped. I couldn't drink cacao. I mean, I started to react. And so I had to stop everything. And now I still will react a little bit to it. I think I also just consumed so much of it, like it was like a daily practice once a day at least, sometimes twice a day. Like it was a lot for my body. I think it's a strong, medicine on the body. And so um I would say, like, in a nutshell, not really. I'm not like 100% opposed to it if I felt really called for a specific, I don't know, depending on the medicine, depending on the ceremony, depending on the situation. But definitely, like, as part of my, daily, weekly, monthly, even yearly life, it's not really like a part of my flow right now.
Mm. Do you feel like they contributed to some of your depletion at that time?
Yeah, I do. And this kind of ties into what I was just speaking about, where it's like I do feel that a lot of, especially people like Westerners, and like for modern society, like we just are more cellularly fragile. And so we go down to, I went down to Peru and worked with master plants like ayahuasca and San Pedro cactus, and I've done combo. I mean, like I've done kind of a lot of them. And um, but we're starting from a much more depleted state. And so we know that many of these plant medicines deplete magnesium ions in the body. And so once we're starting to mess with magnesium levels, that's going to impact. There's a whole mineral cascade that happens because all the minerals are interconnected in the body. So we know that there's a mineral depletion aspect. And then add on top of it, like the just stress on the body. You're often fasting or doing very limited diets before some of these plant medicines. You're staying up all night. That's very taxing on the adrenals. You're having these like peak experiences, that can kind of blast you out of your body. And so there's just many, many layers to it that um, I mean, of course, I have deep reverence and respect for these medicines. And I think I understand why they've been a part of, indigenous cultures all around the world. Like pretty much every culture has their connection with some sort of plant medicine. And I understand why. I think they do really help us um, reconnect to like our humanity in a very like earth-based primal way. And now my kind of stance is like we have to also integrate like where are we modern society today. We can't just say, oh, these are just, the indigenous people use these medicines, so we can use them too. It's like we have to look at what is my level of physiological health and resiliency? Like, am I actually capable of staying up 2 nights in a row all night and going on this like pretty intense psychedelic experience? Can I integrate that well? Is my body feel, resilient to do that work? And I think for a lot of us, the answer would be no. There needs to be some more like grounded foundational health replenished before going into that work.
Let's leave it to the Americans to go to the extreme, right?
Right? Harder, better, faster, more.
Right.
Yeah.
And your thoughts on microdosing? Similar?
Yeah. Well, I think with microdosing, um, I think there are hormonal impacts for women specifically that we do not fully understand. Like it's a thing that is relatively new from my understanding. And there's not a lot of research done on it. And I don't know about many cultures that practiced microdosing, right? It was usually like more of a one, like all at once in a ceremony kind of thing. But microdosing psilocybin works, the reason that it's popular is because it works on serotonin pathways. So a lot of people are drawn to it, especially if they've been on or are considering SSRI-based antidepressants, which of course, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I would rather take, something that comes from the earth than a pharmaceutical if I have the option. And both SSRIs they have a lot of side effects. The serotonin in the body is actually kind of a, what's the word? It like serotonin increases in bears before they go into hibernation. So it kind of like calms us in a way, or like depresses us. And serotonin also is tied in with estrogen in the body. And so again, like there's not much out there on this, but I do have a post on my Instagram for anyone that's interested. I did a collaboration with my nurse friend, who's much more like sciencey than I am, but we've been really talking about like, if like, for example, in my case, so estrogen dominance is very tied to histamine intolerance. So if you have too much estrogen in the body, if the body's not able to detox estrogen properly, then you can start to develop histamine issues. So I do feel there's some tie with like serotonin causing more estrogen dominance, causing histamine issues or other challenges from estrogen dominance or imbalance in the body. And so with microdosing, it's like, I mean, I actually like the concept of taking a smaller amount of something rather than like a really strong psychedelic journey. If I were to like, I don't know, celebrate my birthday or some kind of celebratory experience, I might be drawn to doing that. So taking a small dose of something, but taking it consistently, regularly, I think that can be a bit more problematic than we realize. And for me, the question, if I could go back and ask myself, like, the question is, why do we need microdosing, or why do we need even coffee or cacao? Why do we need these things in order to feel happy or feel focused or feel creative? Because as I've replenished and, been on this path of nourishing myself, I have, clear thought. I feel creative. I have sustained energy. I'm able to focus. I mean, I'm not like superhuman. I'm still, have my stuff, but like, I think we've kind of lost sense of like, we are in like naturally, we should be able to do all these things that we tend to like now we're turning towards these substances to like give us a crutch to lean on. But to me, it's like, if you're having a really hard time focusing, or if you're having, if you're not creative, like that's a sign that there's maybe depressed vitality of the system. And so symptoms are a way your body's speaking to you. It's like a message.
And a lot of people don't have the know-how or the resources or where to look. It's just like either, Western medicine, it might be like antidepressants, then the first suggestion. So yeah, and just with our food being industrialized, also our lifestyles, and a lot of people go to those things to cope with like, oh man, well, I have to do this thing
Right.
today that my soul doesn't actually want to do.
Right.
You take a little microdose or something to get through it, or any
Totally.
number of, for some people it's coffee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could you give us a little overview of minerals and just like what do you see most people are insufficient in and how they work together?
Yeah. So you mentioned hair tissue mineral analysis. So that's the actual lab test where you take a sample of your hair, send it to a lab, they burn it and measure the ash content to the mineral content of the ash. So we're looking at minerals and metals being excreted into the hair over the 3 months before that test is taken or that hair sample is taken. So that's one thing that makes this really unique. Whereas like blood work is literally a snapshot in time. You could drink a smoothie before getting your blood taken and it would totally, change some of the results. So hair tissue mineral analysis has like this longer it can show kind of a longer picture of your system and your health. And so within hair tissue mineral analysis, there are multiple different kind of lineages and approaches of people using this lab test. The approach that I'm trained in and that I practice is called mineral nutritional balancing. It was founded by Dr. Paul Eck in the 70s and 80s, and he analyzed over 200,000 hair tests. And so this lineage has been kind of in practice for 50 years, which I think is really powerful to like just kind of show that it really does work. And so when looking at this test, the thing that I'm really looking at is the overall picture of all the minerals. It's not just, oh, your magnesium is low, we need to replenish your magnesium, because the minerals are all interconnected. So if you manipulate one level of a mineral, it's going to change other levels. So there are antagonisms and synergisms. So for example, if I were to, zinc, let's talk about zinc. Zinc is one of those ones that like a lot of people are going to take zinc when they feel like they're getting sick or their immune system's down. And zinc is a sodium antagonist. So the more zinc you take, it'll actually lower your sodium levels. Sodium is one of the four main electrolytes, one of the four main macrominerals in the body. We need adequate sodium. We need adequate zinc, and so this is where that random supplementation can actually be quite problematic, because everything is impacting everything else. And so that's the genius of mineral balancing, is that Dr. Paul Eck basically found, he created these specific formulas that take into account synergisms and antagonisms and the ratios and the cofactors to make these actually bioavailable and actually able to make like trackable, visible, tangible shifts in someone's health that we can track with hair testing. I'll pause there. I could keep going, but I'll let you kind of guide me.
Yeah, tell us more. I feel like I'm following.
Okay. So when I'm looking at a hair test, I'm looking at levels of minerals. So we spend, a lot of time looking at calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Those are the macro minerals. They make up 99% of the mineral content of our body. And then all the other ones like phosphorus, zinc, manganese, iron, copper, selenium, chromium, those are all like more trace minerals. And what's happening with those first four, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, is going to inform what's happening with the rest of the system. So we really focus on getting those first four into balance. And so I'm looking at levels, like, if you have a really high magnesium level, that actually to me shows that there's a loss of magnesium. So too much magnesium is being pulled from where it should be and being excreted into the hair and other places in the body where we don't necessarily want it. So I'm looking at losses, I'm looking at deficiencies, and then I'm also looking at ratios of the minerals to each other. So we can see thyroid function, we can see adrenal function, we can see how well your body's tolerating blood sugar, so carbohydrate, glucose, metabolism. We can look at overall cellular vitality. So that's one of the most important ratios of the test. How well are your cells able to electrically communicate to each other? And we can also see liver, like if there's likelihood of liver stagnation in the system. We can see if there's kidney stress. So those are just the physiological things that I'm looking at. And that's another reason why I love this test, is it's quite comprehensive. We get a lot of information from just one lab. Then there's this whole other kind of psycho-emotional component where people, like basically Dr. Eck and some of his students over time have developed patterns. So we can make psychological correlations with different patterns of minerals on a test, because it's not just, we don't look at this as just, oh, this is just a physical health thing. It's comprehensive. So if you have lower levels of potassium, you may be more prone to fear. If you have lower levels of magnesium, you may be more prone to socially withdraw. If your calcium is imbalanced, you may feel really defensive. So there are actual patterns that will show like, hey, you're actually in a lifestyle stressor pattern, meaning there's something externally in your life that's not like your soul's not happy about. And it's showing up in your mineral balance, it's showing up in your physical health. So that's another reason why I love this test, is because it's not, when we include the psychological component, it requires people to take some agency of their own healing rather than just looking to me as expert where I just give you a protocol and as long as you do the protocol, you should be good. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. Like you actually, like this test is basically like a cellular mirror of you. And so I'm kind of just reflecting, like, this is what the mirror is showing. And it can be a little confronting sometimes where you're like, oh, yeah, wow, I have been hating my job for 5 years. Right. And that's going to take a toll on your health. And, it's all part of it.
Is that kind of what happened to you when someone showed you your labs and was like, what did you find was out of alignment for yourself?
Yeah. My first test. So the other thing with HTMA is at least mineral balancing, we like to retest every 3-ish months to really see how the protocols are working. So my first test, I had severely sluggish adrenals, severely sluggish thyroid. I'm pretty sure I also had the lifestyle stressor pattern, which is that like there's something in my life that's not working for me. I also was in a low potassium, so it's a sympathetic dominance pattern, which is basically showing that I was dependent on my sympathetic nervous system or my fight or flight nervous system. I had been like chronically living in that, where ideally we want to be, in a balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic and be able to calm down when life is calm. Those are some of the main patterns that I remember. But yeah, I was blown away. Like I was like, how does this person know about my inner world, Yeah.
Yeah. And I know from the outside that you moved from California to Minnesota where you grew up,
Yeah.
and you also left a relationship in that around that time. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier when I was in kind of the depths of my histamine intolerance, I was in a relationship that my nervous system didn't feel safe in. And obviously that took time for me to really see that and understand that. And when you're kind of when you're in the depths or in the darkness and you don't have a lot of energy, it's very hard to see stuff like that. As I started to focus on my nourishment and replenishment, my return, and long story short, I had to end that relationship. And looking back, it's like I think a part of me felt like I was walking on eggshells. And obviously that felt very related to my body's, hyper reactiveness to everything. That's what ultimately developed. That's how it kind of manifested for me. So yeah, so I did leave that relationship like I guess almost, I don't know, 15 months ago or so. And then I was living in California, have a beautiful community there still, but I started to it just wasn't I was feeling stagnant. And it's very common for women, that come, if they're kind of like in a malnourished place, as they start to nourish, it's very common to either make relationship shifts or make lifestyle shifts, because it's like we kind of start to actually come home to ourselves, and I started to value my peace and my peaceful environment where I can keep a regulated nervous system. Like I started valuing that more than anything. So it's really a big process of kind of coming back into your power. And I almost equate it to, I don't know if you've heard, but like I probably have how women, when they're on birth control, they're attracted to different men. And once they stop taking birth control, not attracted to them anymore. Um, I kind of feel like that was sort of what happened to me. Like I was just not, I was kind of depleted, not super in my body. So I was just chasing these peak experiences and wanting to go to festivals and wanting to like go out and yeah. And then, as I started to really slow down and replenish, my values really changed, where I started to really value my family more and really value wanting to be a mother. Like I'd always known I'd wanted to be one, but it was kind of in the back of my head. And then all of a sudden it was like, I could feel my body again. I put on a little weight. I started strength training. My libido returned. And so it's like, as my whole metabolism started coming online, I really started to feel this like deep desire to be a mother. And I feel like I have the energy now to care for a family, and other children, whereas before I didn't have that level of energy. So it was just kind of like in the background. So as I started to kind of realize that my values were changing, I just was feeling less, I don't know, less aligned or something with where I was living, and also felt like I needed a fresh start. I'd been in California for 15 years, close to, it was a long time. And that's kind of like 2 7-year cycles. I had turned 35 last year. So that's kind of another like 7-year cycle. Some people view that as like, true adulthood when you turn 35. And yeah, I kind of just decided that I wanted to be in a place that, to go home, to be closer to my family. And also, like the Twin Cities, Minnesota is very family oriented, very, very family oriented. And there's something about my soul, I think, that wanted to be around that again. So I made the move.
Yeah. Oh. And tell us more about so I know you've been in this desire for motherhood and making choices in alignment with that. Um, and it's not easy to leave a relationship for a woman at 35 or whenever it was you made that
Yep.
choice. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, yeah, it was hard. I mean, we had gotten engaged. We were engaged for a year, and that was really when things started to fall apart. Actually, I feel like that was kind of the tipping point. And I was holding on, but it wasn't really in my conscious mind of like, I don't want to be single and 35. It was more just like, oh, we committed to each other, like this ring is significant, this is meaningful. And so I was in that place, and like he really wasn't so much, in a way. And so it got really not great. And then I made the decision, like finally was like, okay, we need to end this. Like, this is just not working out. We're not going in the same direction. And that was in December. And then I don't remember the year because it's whatever, but December, 15 months ago. And then I turned 35 in February. And that birthday was this kind of like, oh crap moment. Like, oh my God, I'm 35, I'm single. What am I doing with my life? Like, that's when it all really hit me. It's not easy. I mean, I fluctuate probably every day between like, I'm knowing that I'm healthier for sure now than I was in my 20s, and knowing that I'm fertile. I track my cycle. I eat really well. I take good care of myself. So it's like, I don't have any doubts around that. So yeah, I kind of fluctuate between like, I'm good. I've got like 5, 10, maybe 10 years left, like, I don't know if you know Wonia, but she just got pregnant at 47. So it's like, there's many, 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 many women having babies in their 40s, many. And, and it's really scary because there's also the like, oh, if you're 35 and over, it's a geriatric pregnancy. And, my parents and like their kind of generation, like I had never been asked if I was going to freeze my eggs before moving back to the city. because I was living out in like hippie land, Northern California, where we're just like trusting our bodies. And then all of a sudden, like just friends, my friend's dad, who I've known since I was like in high school, he's like, "Oh, are you gonna freeze your eggs?" And I'm just like, "What?" Like, no, but that's so normal. And I'm not like bashing anyone that does that at all. But I just hadn't even that, getting asked that question started to spark a little more anxiety in me because I'm like, well, should I? I don't know. I've never even thought about it. So I fluctuate a lot. And it makes dating is very interesting in your mid 30s, especially as a woman who wants children. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like we could do a whole podcast on that, but
Yeah. In the Midwest too, I'm sure it's just different.
it's
Different.
very different. It's not just like carefree in your 20s, just like, do I have a connection with this person? It's like there is a checklist, and there's also a time factor, and it's something that I'm still learning how to navigate. And also, I'm also back to, I'm not willing to sacrifice my peace. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health. And so I have to just keep surrendering into a deep place of trust where like the right relationship will come and I'm not in control.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting go
Mhm.
and just being in that divine surrender. Yeah. What, any wisdom you feel like you have if there's a woman out there listening who's like, I'm feeling in a similar place, or like, especially if the pieces of feeling out of alignment, like it took a lot of courage for you to make these really big shifts.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, I mean, what I want to say is like the most cliche thing that I've personally felt a lot of anger when I like saw people say this to me or like saw, this response on Instagram where it's kind of the vibe of like, you don't need to search, just focus on being happy with yourself and it will come. And that infuriated me for quite some time. And now I recently actually just stopped doing the dating apps. Um, I'm calling it, apparently it's a Gen Z phrase called boy sober. Trying to keep my youth here. So I just was like, I'm going boy sober, and I'm like really showing up for myself in ways that I haven't before in my life, if I'm being really honest. And it's been very confronting. And, I started at a very young age I was sexually active very young. I was very promiscuous. Like I just kind of dove in with no boundaries or connection to myself at a very young age. So I really am unraveling a lot. And my personal medicine here is focusing on myself and like doing things that fill me up. And I'm also working on tending to that little girl that just feels like she's unworthy of love or just grasping for someone else to, validate that she's worthy of love. So it's like, if anyone's listening to this and they're just like, oh my God, shut up. It's like, I get it. I really do. I mean, I really get it in my heart. And I'm trying to just be that partner that I really want. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be my own partner to the level that I'm like fantasizing about coming into my life. Right. Because to really be in a relationship that's at the like quote unquote level that I'm desiring, like I really need to know how to hold myself.
Mhm.
And that, if I'm coming from a really deep, like grasping, yearning, desperation energy, like that's going to be reflected in the dynamic. And yeah, so it's really profoundly uncomfortable. Like this is not a fun or comfortable phase of life for me at all. And I feel more myself than I've ever felt. And I don't think I would trade that, you know?
Mhm.
Like I know that I just have to like keep showing up for myself and something's gonna happen. I mean, life does its thing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that's sort of helpful for
Yeah.
anyone.
I just really felt your maturity and your self-worth coming through in that answer.
Mhm.
Yeah, which takes time to cultivate. It takes knowing yourself
Right.
and really becoming, making mistakes and becoming the person that you want to
Hmm.
be and want to be with. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I guess, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I try to kind of anchor into, and I've gotten this reflection from a lot of my mama friends, is like, it is kind of a luxury or a privilege to be able to be so intentional with choosing your partner, basically like kind of calling in or creating, the relationship, the family dynamic that you really want, like from an older, wiser, mature place, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no like better or worse path, but I have friends that are like, I don't know, getting divorced and they have a toddler and they're like, dude, like take your time because you are gonna, like this, you are not gonna get stuck, hopefully, in like a really challenging situation because of whatever, like rushing into things or, there is a privilege in the spaciousness. And I feel like I'm very clear on, what I value and what I want to teach my children. And I know how to like cook and I know how to, manage my time and I know how to take care of myself. And so all of those things are going to lend itself to a much more, I don't know, like functional family than if I was 22 and just super depleted. Right. And like, I mean, that's also a beautiful path of like learning and growth for those young mamas out there, right? Like I'm not putting that down, but it's like I'm trying to anchor into the positives, right? The silver lining of like, okay, it's okay. There's still beauty here and possibility here.
Definitely. Yeah. And just let us know, anyone listening that wants to know more about your work and what are you offering right now? How do people get involved? How do you do one of these mineral analyses?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Sena two underscores Maria, Sena. My website, sena-maria.com. I'm offering one-on-one HTMA consultations. So I have a free 15-minute call that I recommend people do first just to really understand how this works, because it's not just like a one-time consult quick fix kind of approach. It's definitely like more of a longer term commitment. And I'm doing it annually. I'm considering doing a second group this year in 2024, but I'm not sure yet. But I do offer a 12-month long membership for women called Radiantly Nourished. And so we actually have 23 women in the first one this year, which is amazing. And it's basically a combination of one-on-one 2 hour consults with me. So you get 3 different hair tests throughout the year. We have 3 different one-on-one consultations. You get updated protocols. And then there's also a group support every month. And there's like a group forum. And so it's basically, women being together on the healing journey and supporting each other and having my personal support as well. So I'll definitely be opening up doors to the next group cohort in January 2025, and I may do a little one before that too. We'll see.
Oh, wonderful. Well, anything you want, any last words before I close this call today with a short prayer?
Hmm. Hmm. I think all I'll say to close is trust the path. Trust your path. Trust those little whispers, and know that you can never go wrong by loving yourself and choosing yourself and supporting yourself.
Tina,
Thank
just
you.
bring that into our hearts. Mm. Yeah, and for all of us, just receiving this wisdom, this transmission, this embodiment, that we just know our self-worth, what we're worthy of, what we are being guided to. If there's anything today that sparked something in you, there's just a little gem you want to take with you. Just feel that. and yeah, let it become part of your being. May this wisdom, this allow us to come into deeper and deeper alignment with our true heart's path. Many blessings and so much gratitude. Thank you for being here, Sena. Lovely to reconnect.
Thank you so much for having me, Meredith.
Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you liked it, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes. You can also follow along on Instagram at Meredith Rom and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to be sure to receive all the new and inspiring content. Thanks again for being here. It's an honor to walk this path with you.